Yeah. Mimi, are you in class?
Last week I had some network problems. I couldn't catch up much.
Okay. So who can remind us of where we got to last week?
Okay, sir. So I also got same problem, and I was able to maybe get stuffs. Hello, sir.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I also got last week, so I didn't get the ending.
Okay, but we had a video recording, and Mimi, I sent you the link to the recording. What happened to that? Hello? Mimi?
Hello, sir.
Hi, Gideon. Can you hear me?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
This is what I was able to. Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Yes.
This is what I was able to. Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay. You taught us that we have 12 marketing mix, and these 12 marketing mix has been really modified into 4 P's, which is a product, price, place, and then promotion according to marketing. So such 4 marketing, it has also been converted into 4 C's, which is consumer, convenience, communication, and then cost. So this is what I was able to.
Okay. So we got to the customer service and the marketing mix. That's where we got to, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me say that so the model was, or the way we are going about this lecture is that after each lecture, I send the link to the video so that you can follow through. Those of you who have network issues, you can actually, follow up the conversation through the link that I sent. Now, if we spend time to do the recording and do the preparation and then send the link, and you do not use the link, but you come back to say you had network issues and so you couldn't catch up with the rest of the lecture, then suddenly the intention or the idea that we're trying to use various means to make sure that you understand what is happening is not being achieved. I mean, the objective is not being achieved. So you have to be minded that yes, if you have a network challenges, which is true because some of you may have network issues, but I suppose that's the more reason why they asked that those of you who have network issues, you come on campus. I'm not sure whether the campus networks also having issues as well. So when I send the link, I expect you to go through the lecture. That is, if you had issues with the network. And even if you didn't have issues, but you want to better understand it, perhaps you want to go over. That's why we send the link. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to continue where we left off last week. We spoke about the 4 P's to the 4 C's. I think that was the last session that we got to. We should be minded that we do not have enough time. So we've got to actually go through, the slides very much quickly, especially with the qualitative bit, so that we can actually go into the analytics. And then you also have a simulation exercises to go through, which means you have to familiarize yourself with the simulation, software, including the guidance notes, etc., before you will be able to participate in the simulation, which is going to be your assessment, by the way. So we have to go through this quickly. So the last week, when we got to the changing of the 4 P's to the 4 C's, I suppose we discussed, the reason why price is being changed to cost to the customer. We explained the various dimensions of the cost, what we mean by cost to the customer, where we talked about, opportunity cost being one of them. The idea that, you foregoing one product for another means that, there is a cost to you just in case the product doesn't actually go down well. You experience what we call the dissonance. We explained, dissonance as some of the post-purchase negative feelings that you have as a result of a purchase, whether you think you made a bad purchase. And we explained how, from the supply perspective, dissonance can be reduced or cost to customer can be reduced. We explained the use of, multiple channels to ensure that, customers could have, product on a convenience, and that could actually reduce, their cost of acquisition or cost of acquiring the product. So you realize that the cost here actually ties in with the place as well, because the idea of also giving multiple, purchasing, payment plan, multiple payment, route. For example, instead of only accepting cash, bless me, only accepting cash, you also request that perhaps customers can use Momo or mobile money, or can use Visa card or card payment. They can use various other, payment systems. Would also reduce the barrier, the cost barrier to them. It would offer convenience, which is also a place element. Of course, we understood that, product had been, converted to customer needs, with customer centricism as, the lenses through which, we as marketers actually design, develop, and distribute product, which means that the entire customer needs have to be considered. And we talked about the use of, tools like research and customer segmentation and targeting as a way to ensure that you can better understand the needs of the customer. Then, of course, promotion changed to communication, which communication here means that we are especially looking at the IMC, the integrated marketing communication, making sure that we are actually reaching the customer through so many other communication channels. And then we're ensuring the communication is, two-way as opposed to one way. In fact, communication is actually handled from an engagement perspective, where we are in continuous, communication with the customer, in order that, we could actually provide the satisfaction that we're talking about. So we discussed the entire 4 P's into the 4 C's. Okay. Now let's look at a comparison between the attributes of, transactional marketing and relationship marketing. What do we say that if an organization is transactional, what is the character? And when we say an organization is a relational organization or a relationship-based organization or a relationship-based activity, what is the character? So these are the comparisons, as you can see. We said that a transactional marketing means orientation to single sales. That does not mean that you're only selling, just one item or you're selling just a day, but we're talking about when the sale happens, nothing else happens. Or even before the sale, there is very little that organization actually do to facilitate the sales in the process. So the focus or the sole focus of the organization is about earning a sale, and the rest of it, is not really of their concern. Now, the next is discontinuous customer contact. So when organizations do not, engage in a frantic effort to establish, contact with the customer, we're talking about, transactional. Focus on product features. We've talked about it in the product orientation, production orientation era. Short term or short time scale, little emphasis on customer services. We've said it, limited commitment to meeting customer expectation because we're very much focused on our own, goals and objectives. Quality as a concern of production staff. So the production staff, not really customer facing and not really bothered about what the customer's concerns are in terms of quality. Their attention is about product quality and making sure that they produce what they think is the best product, in their minds. So that, these are the characteristics of a transactional marketing as opposed to relationship, which is on your right. As you can see, you know, orientation to customer retention. So a relational or relationship-based organization is actually focused on how do I retain the customer, and that means a lot. Continuous customer contact, focus on customer value, long time scale, high emphasis on customer service, high commitment, quality as a concern of all staff. So you realize that the opposite of the first are the second, or is the second. And the idea of retention, which preoccupies a relational organization, means the rest of the activities, downwards. All right. Has anyone got a question? David, Davita, sorry.
Please, can you go over the short time scale, the
Okay.
difference, like the short time scale?
Okay. So for short time scale, it means that the company is not really thinking about 5 years, 10 years down the line with the customer. Is thinking about just that particular moment. So they're not really bothered. When you go to, for example, Circle, Davita, have you been to Circle before? Davita. Okay. So,
Hello.
yeah, have
Hi.
you been to Circle before?
Yes.
Kwame Nkrumah Circle. The guys who sell mobile phones, by the wayside. The
Yes.
exactly. If you have heard the stories before, the character is that when you go there and buy something, the next day they have moved their shop from where they were located to another place, right? Meaning that they probably had sold you, and they are aware, had sold you something not of the value you bought it for, and they're anticipating a possible return. So for them to, you know, um, for them not to replace it, or for them to evade capture, they move their shop to another place so that you don't find them. Now, companies with a short-term scale or short-time scale thinking are the ones who will put, goods purchased here are not returnable, that kind of thing. So regardless of what type of purchase you do, of course, some items per their character may not be returnable because of the hygiene conditions, etc. But companies that are regardless, are concerned about if you buy it, you don't have opportunity to return it. These are mindsets of a short time scale companies. Are you with me?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So they just want to make money, make profits, and they go away. Who else want to ask a question? Who else want to ask a question? Okay, so I hope it's clear. Now let's look at the relationship forming. So last week we discussed so many, factors, that leads to relationship. We talked about, the basic unit of relatability. That is, the basic identities that we use to establish relationships. We went through so many other conversations. Now today we're looking at forming relationship. How do firms form relationships? And how do they maintain them? Now, can someone tell me about last week? Sorry, we understood that we have so many relationships that we have. Now, can someone describe to me what they think their roles are in a particular relationship? If you take one single relationship, describe to me what you think your role are or your role is, and the role of the other party in that relationship. Who can tell me? So your normal relationship that you have, we described so many relationships, last week. Can you tell me one of the relationships that you have and what you think your role is or the other party's role is? Or
So,
whether you can categorize it. All right, Marion.
okay, so I have a relationship with the class
Yeah.
as a course rep.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my role as a course rep is to get them the links on time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when it's time for class, remind them, and then if there is anything you want to relate to the class, sometimes you tell me and then I tell them. So I
Okay.
think that's my
Okay.
relationship with the class.
Excellent. So in this relationship with your class, per the role that you've described to me, are you the supplier or the consumer?
Please, I'm the supplier.
Okay. What about buyer seller? Are you the buyer or you're the seller?
Am I the buyer or the seller?
Yeah.
I think I'm the seller.
Okay. Great. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's a good one from Mimi. Who else can tell us their roles and their relationship sets and what roles do they have in there? Who else? Another role, another relationship set. Pump up. Today you guys are quiet. I'm really surprised. In the first place, I woke up too early than I should have because I thought the class would be, only to be told that the class was at 11:30. Nanaya didn't actually inform me. I queried her, but obviously she apologized and I forgave her. So, but of course, it meant that I had to actually do more and I've been sitting down. So I need you guys to put in more as well. Yeah, pump up. Yes, who can tell us some of the roles that they have? I mean, the set of relationships that they have and their roles. Guys, we discussed different sets of relationships that we have last week. Yeah? Okay. If no one is talking, Mimi, can you give us another set of relationships that you have and what do you think the roles are?
Okay. I have, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a personal relationship.
Yeah?
So yes, so I have a boyfriend, and
Mm-hmm.
I think my role,
Yeah? Go
my
on.
role,
Mhm. Who is giving Mimi fans? Now, I asked you to tell me. You didn't. Now you're giving her fans. Okay.
okay,
Mimi, go
so
ahead.
my role in the relationship is mostly, we don't really have particular roles we play, but then mostly we give each
Conceptualize.
other.
Conceptualize.
Okay, we give each other advice. If the person is feeling down or something, we both encourage each other. And if there's any financial help, we both support each other financially.
Okay.
And
So would you say that the buyer-supplier roles interchange from time to time?
yes, please.
So
It's
it's not static, it's dynamic.
No, sir. Benjamin, why?
Benjamin, why are you sad? Please, if you have a POP, don't bring it to the class. Or you want to contribute. Benjamin, tell us, what's your role? What set of relationship and what's your role?
Okay, so I wanted to talk about my role as in the class.
So tell us which relationship set you're talking about and the role.
So in a way, I would say that I am a customer because
Which relationship are you talking about? Which set of relationship are you talking about? Benjamin?
Yes, sir.
Which set of relationship are you talking about before you describe the role?
I I wanted to talk about my personal relationship, but then
okay, so your personal boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, right?
Yes. So
okay,
and in that, just as Lily said, the rules are not defined. So it's just like when the person needs anything emotionally, physically, spiritually, you are there for the person, just to make sure that you are supporting the person in all that the person needs.
Okay, great one. But why were you dilly-dallying? Why were you not talking? The idea that you're talking about your boyfriend, girlfriend was difficult for you?
No, sir. Someone was making noise in my room. That was why.
Okay, so hair or Hineba? Who is hair or Hineba?
It's
Patience.
like the people were not expecting this.
They were, they were not expecting that from you, right?
Yes.
Why were they not expecting that from you? Benjamin.
Yes, sir.
Why were they not expecting that from you?
I don't know. So you can see from the
He's lying.
He's lying. Why? Who is saying that he's lying?
That's my friend.
Are you saying that he hasn't got a girlfriend?
Yeah, I'm still searching though.
You are still searching, or Benjamin?
Yes, this is from previous experience.
He
broke up.
Benjamin, so this is from previous experience. Okay. All right, good.
Hello, sir. I want to chip in.
Yeah, Gideon, come in.
Okay, sir. I have a relationship with my dad.
Okay, hold on for me. Patience, are you interested or you just, what do you call, jealous of that? So he told me he doesn't have. Yes, but now he said he has. So anyway.
I am still searching.
All right, Gideon, you still don't have. Okay, yeah, Patience, sorry, he still hasn't got it. So
we are all searching.
You're all searching. Okay, that's fine. So Patience, he's still searching. So if you're interested, maybe you can link up. All right, Gideon, go on.
Okay. So I have a relationship with my dad.
Yeah, so your family relationship.
I pay attention to him. Yeah, I pay attention to him.
You pay attention, yes.
I pay attention to him. I obey him as well. I listen to his advices and ask for anything I want.
Yeah.
So that's what.
Okay, so between yourself and your dad, what role are you playing? Are you a customer?
Okay. I'm the buyer.
You're
he's
the buyer.
The seller.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and your dad.
And I'm the customer, and he's the supplier.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, there is a concern here. Stephanie says, so I'm your what? Benjamin. So you have to go and answer her. So she's asking you.
Please, let's finish the class. We'll talk about it.
We'll deal with that. Okay, good. All right. So Gideon had actually said that, the relationship between him and his family, his dad, He's the buyer, the dad is the supplier. Good. Okay, so having discussed that, let's now look at another thing. In these relationships that you've talked about, what is the level of motivation? Do you think that, or do you have a feeling that one is highly motivated than the other? Yeah, especially those of you who have actually spoken or those who haven't spoken. Do you think that you have a particular set of relationship that you think you are the one, maintaining it, or you are the one seeking to maintain it, or the other person? What's the level of motivation amongst the parties involved?
Okay.
Yeah, Daniel.
Yes, sir. Sir, please, for me, I like to use my relationship.
Yeah.
And it's a relationship with a team, a music team. And I happen to be a leader in the team.
Yeah.
At the former, since it is at the forming stage,
Daniel,
what
can
I
you
do is
speak
that
up a
I
little bit?
call them. Okay, say what I'm saying is that since the relationship is at the forming stage,
Yeah.
because we formed it not long ago.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do is that keep people coming for rehearsal. We meet like once a week on Sunday every week, once a week. And for me to keep them for me to get them to come for rehearsals, I'll have to be calling them within the week. Sometimes like on Mondays, Tuesdays, sometimes on Fridays to call them just to ask how they are doing, if everything is okay, if I can help, if there's anything I can do for them. So
Excellent.
I think there's a way of motivating them to come for rehearsals.
Excellent.
The forming stage.
Excellent. Great point. So Daniel, the follow-up question is that in this relationship that you're in with your team, do you think that you are putting in more effort to maintain it, or they're putting more effort to maintain it?
Okay, so I believe at this stage, I am putting in more effort to maintain it.
Excellent. Okay, good idea. Thank you. So if we use...
Stage, yes.
Go on. All right.
Okay,
if
so
we
that
use
I
this...
believe with time they will have to put in more. They will have to...
Okay, yeah. Okay, so if we have to use these examples as we have described, you realize that in relationships, both parties or the parties involved in the relationships put in, effort in maintaining the relationship. Now, the effort that they put in is based on their motivation level, which we call motivational investment. All right. So, depending on how interested, a party is in a particular relationship, the effort drives, much higher towards their end. All right. So, if the parties are highly, motivated, they expend a lot of energy or they expend a lot of investment, into the relationship. If they're not, so keen about it, of course, you would expect that, the motivational investment in that particular relationship is also limited. I'm sure you can see on the board. So when we talk about, forming relationships, how do firms form relationships, we realize that the relationship between the firm or between the firms or the buyer and the seller, all right, would differ, depending on the level of interest, as we talked about. So you look at it from this perspective. On the horizontal, axis, you have buyer motivation, which is low and high. And then on the vertical axis, you have seller motivation, which is low and high. All right. So in relationships that there is a high motivational investment from the seller and there's a low motivational investment from the buyer, we call it seller maintained relationship. Yeah. So in this particular instance, from what Daniel actually explained, he is currently in a seller maintained relationship because, as he said, he's the one putting in more effort because the team is young. All right. So once the team is young, he is trying to get them bonded. He is trying to get them embedded in the team. He needs to expend more money or more effort in keeping the team and making sure that it works. So currently he's in a seller-maintained relationship, making sure that he's calling them, finding out what is, wrong with them, whether he can be of assistance to them, etc. These are the activities he's undertaking. Now, who can explain that concept in the commercial context or in marketing concept? A relationship that is seller-maintained relationship. That is, there is a higher motivational investment from the seller than the buyer's, a motivational investment. Who can explain that in marketing context? Yeah, Samuel.
Okay, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to, let's say, take an example of, let's say, insurance.
Yes.
Insurance is something that the buyer or the customer doesn't actively go out looking for. It's something that he needs,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just something like this. So I think it's more of the insurance companies who are more on the buyer,
Yeah.
always checking up on them, making sure like they are keeping up with their insurance payments and all that. So I think maybe in that case that can be
Excellent.
an instance where the seller is more on the buyer, or the seller is
Excellent.
more.
That's a very good example. That tells you that in some markets, all right, in some markets, there is likely to be seller maintained characteristics because those markets may not be purely buyer driven. Customers may not necessarily be interested in that. And that example that Samuel gave is very true. When you look at the insurance market, it is mostly, seller maintained because ordinarily customers may not go out there to seek for insurance. And so if you're within that particular industry, your relationship type is most likely to be as described by Samuel because it is seller maintained kind of environment. So if you're a relationship marketing manager or you are a marketing staff in an insurance firm, do not think that customers would on their own be coming to you. It means that you have to have a lot more motivational investment from your part than you would expect from the buyer's part. Who else can give us another example, another context of a seller motivational relationship? Who else? We do not have time, so we have to speed up. Okay, now where the relationship is high, that is seller motivational investment is high and buyer motivational investment is high, we call it bilateral relationship. And that is the ideal relationship that firms want to be in, where there is equal, motivation, equal appetite to keep the relationship going. And so most companies would want to be in a bilateral relationship, context, for example, where the motivational investment from the seller is the same level as the motivational investment from the buyer. Who can give me a typical example? Who can give a typical example of a high scenario? Yes? Okay. So if you don't give the examples, I will be, tempted to put them together as part of your assignment. Okay. So we'll go ahead. Now there is also what we consider as a buyer-maintained relationship where the motivational investment is high from the buyer, all right, but is low from the seller's side. Of course, there are other instances where, there's a high demand in the market, there are few suppliers, and then, of course, suppliers are able to manipulate because they think that they are highly sought after because of the interest in the market. And then, of course, there's a discrete exchanges where the relationships are somehow, even out. There's not much between the two, parties involved. And so it is very much transactional relationship. it is you buy, you go, I don't really care if you don't buy, that kind of situation. So in a buyer, a low buyer, a motivational investment relationship and a low seller motivational investment relationship, you're most likely to have a very transactional, attitude to the market. And these instances, as we said, sometimes are not static. They could change, especially if you have a scenario where you are, quoting the customer first time. You probably would have a seller motivational investment, contest where you've got to be contacting the customer regularly, etc. The relationship can get to a point where the relationship will flip. Now it becomes a buyer motivation because the buyer probably could have much more interest in securing the relationship. The the seller or the business, may have a lot more customers to deal with to satisfy. They may not even have the capacity to satisfy everybody. So the relationship can now, turn around to become a buyer maintained. There are so many other instances that we can have. Okay, so if you look at the customer loyalty, what do you call framework, some of the reasons why relationships can actually tilt, whether buyer maintained, seller maintained, or a bilateral situation, they could all be influenced by this particular loyalty, what do you call framework. We're saying that for value to be consumed or for value to be provided, it may come from these three what do you call attributes or three construct. You have the image, you have the quality. Obviously quality is actually described into two, i.e. image and price. So the image that, or the perceived image that the customers have for that particular product, and then of course how much it is actually being sold and how much the customer thinks it is worth, would actually influence the value, in competition terms. So as compared to competition, how much is your worth? And then of course, that leads to attraction and loyalty. So that would actually attract, customers or retain customers. And then of course, it will lead to market share and then profitability. But these are actually, moderated or influenced by switch, barriers to switch or individual organizational customers, characteristics. And then, of course, they also impacted upon by market environment and experiences, as the process go by. So you realize that yes, for a relationship to be either bilateral or discrete or seller maintain or buyer maintain, these factors will influence on them. All right. To what extent is the market very competitive or not? And to what extent do people perceive the product as of good quality? Okay, so the frameworks is also expanded, to include this. So you have your cognitive antecedents, people's perception, about the product, obviously their feelings about it, and the actions they will take, going forward. All right. Now, in relationship also, there is what we call structural capital. That is, in organization, what are the things that actually helps to maintain relationships, not only, your product and services, but of course, we have known that in service environment or in a relational environment, individuals or the people factors actually count a lot. And that's why we looked at the 3 extra P's in addition to the 4 P's. And we made an example that, of course, the idea that, the service is heterogeneous or service has a heterogeneous characteristics, i.e. its outcome could not be guaranteed. And as a result, organizations have to put processes in place to guarantee, a standardized, outcome. The idea that, the production is not, transferred, or the consumption, the service consumption is not transferred. The idea that, service in itself is what we call heterogeneous. We've talked about it, so many other factors. Because of that, if you go to an organization and there is an individual that has a particular expertise, you realize that when that individual actually leaves the organization, that expertise somehow also leaves because people have actually formed relationship with that particular individual, and the customers are continuously looking forward to meeting that particular individual in the business. Why? Because of the expertise that they have and the kind of results they get in terms of their engagement with that particular individual. So the many ways that companies can ensure that when staff leave, they did not leave with the values, or they did not leave with customers because of the skill set that they have. Organizations have to ensure that they embed that particular values into the business. And that is what we call structural capital, the approach that you use to embed a certain quality that is attached to, for example, a particular staff is actually embedded in that business. The relationship is embedded in that business is what we call structural capital. So what do you think an organization can do in order that they could actually keep the relationship that they have with customers in the firm, even if a staff that is favored by most customers actually leave the business? What do you think companies can do? Yeah? Guys, speed up. Did you understand the explanation in the first place? Okay. All right. Mimi, so what I said was that, you remember that we discussed the characteristics of service, and we said one of them is about, the idea that when, let's say, someone goes into a barbering salon, all right, there are about 3 or 4 different barbers there, but the person wants a particular barber to, take on their hair, right? Now, that is because with services, as we said about the people, services themselves are embedded in the people, all right? So the outcome that you get from a particular staff, you probably would have different outcome when you get to another staff to, to deal with you. And because of that, it is important that companies actually do, standardize. They try to standardize their, service protocols. That's why we have the process part of, what do you call, the 3 P's, the 3 extra P's. Now, also that if the individual staff happen to leave the business, what happens is that most often in such cases, the staff end up following that particular individual. So in this case, the barber moves from one company to another barbering shop, and you find that customers are following suit because they believe that this is the guy that can actually do their hair better. Now, in order that you want to stop, that particular scenario, that particular phenomenon happening, organizations do certain things to ensure that they embed those, relationships, which we call capital, structural capital, into the business. And I'm asking, what do you think a company can do to ensure that they can embed, these capital into the business, as opposed to when the staff leave, they end up losing the customers? Abigail.
Okay, so they can train.
Yeah.
They can train the other, for instance, with the example that you gave with the barber shop. If there's one barber that knows how to cut hair like really well in a particular way, they can get him to teach the other barbers in the shop to and train them to be able to cut hair the way that he does, so that they'll be so that they start to do their work as well as he does.
Excellent.
So that in case he leaves the barber shop, customers don't always have to follow.
Excellent. So secondment or apprenticeship in companies can help. So whilst this is your star rated staff that everybody likes, to what extent do you second that particular individual? How do you put another staff under their guidance, under their tutelage, so that continually this guy is picking up from them, the way, their attitude, their posture, their service qualities. How do you ensure that you're putting somebody under their tutelage in order that they can actually learn from them? So secondment or, what do you call, apprenticeship at workplaces perhaps could actually help to embed, what do you call, structural capital. Good point. Who else? Who else want to say something? How do we ensure that we can protect structural capital in business? Yeah? Guys, you're too slow today. Okay. Samuel.
Yes, sir. I think if we are still going by the example at the barber shop, I think sometimes it goes just beyond the skill the barber possesses. It's sometimes the way he's able to interact and then with the customer that comes to all the time. The customers will always want to go to him because they know that yes, fine, you can cut hair, but at least you have we'll have conversations, we'll talk, and then you I can interact with the barber. It's not just like I'm just going there to cut my hair. I think it goes just beyond the skill that that particular barber possesses, but the way he carries himself and the way he relates to his customers.
Okay, good point. But how do we protect it, just in case the barber leaves?
And so as the management, you have to first of all identify that. Once you identify that, and you make sure that it cuts across. It's a general. It's not just peculiar to one.
Okay. So you are adopting that particular, skill set of that barber and standardizing it across the company to make sure that you use, as was said by Abigail, for training, so that everybody across that. Is that what you mean?
It becomes the general standard, not just peculiar to one.
Okay. All right. Good point as well. All right. Can you? Okay. Who else wants to say something? Okay. What about also giving out incentives, for example? So, making sure that at the point of exit, you probably can throw in some loyalty schemes, knowing that if that particular staff leaves, customers could follow that staff. At that particular moment of alert, you also throw in perhaps a loyalty scheme to ensure that you can tie in, those customers to the business so they don't follow. Yeah. All right. So let's move on if you do not have anything else to say. All right. So so that's what we have explained, the embedded knowledge as a relationship criteria, where you try to ensure that you embed, the relationship that, the customer has with staff, in order that when they leave, the customers do not also leave as well. All right. Now let's look at what we call the strategy continuum, the strategies that we adopt in relationship environment in business, in order that we can say, for us to say that we have a relational, a relationship paradigm organization ongoing, we must actually establish some conditions. But of course, would you actually say that at every point in time, regardless of the customer characteristics or the relationship, a firm has to stick to an equal, relationship with every customer, and which we discussed the last time that now we all have a certain degree of commitment to some people, depending on, the relationship objective, depending on the effort, depending on the interest that we have, with a set of, what do you call, the people or the parties we have. So the same way in business, companies have a continuum. I mean, relationship is a continuum. When we say a continuum, it means there's a extreme end of, from transactional to a relational paradigm. And so companies actually adopt, one or two of these, what do you call, paradigm, in order that they could actually, establish. So one of them is that either you're having a relationship as an addition to transactional marketing. And we have seen that, in some in some situations, as we saw in the framework, the buyer or seller maintain relationship. In some situations, the relationship between, or the dealings between you and the customer may be a discrete one. You probably do not want to terminate that relationship, but you want it to be ongoing, which means you may not necessarily invest enough energy or enough effort in that particular relationship, because at the end of the day, it's giving you, some, going, giving you the opportunity as a going concern business, i.e., you're getting your daily, revenues from there. You're actually making some, gains, not necessarily huge, but some gains to keep it going. So you don't, cut off the relationship, but you keep, or you maintain the relationship as it is. So that is where, companies have actually adopted, RM, or relationship marketing, in addition to a transactional one. So the company has some customers that they treat within the relational perspective, and some customers they treat within what transactional perspective. And we saw that an example with our own set of social relationships, as we talked about, the idea that there are some people that you just say hi on campus, but there are some people that you catch up with, you place a call, have about 20-minute conversations. There are some that you would actually go a step further by spending money, taking a car, going there, spending a whole day or week, there. These are sets of relationships. So where organizations have, what we call RM in addition to TM, that's the kind of situation that we're talking about. You're actually having a relationship, a transactional, marketing approach, as well as relationship approach, in that organization. There are some organizations that actually adopt RM as a complete shift from TM. So the dominant theory of relationship is that companies must try as much as possible to establish, a relationship, philosophy, i.e., making sure that the company's behavior and attitude and everything else, its systems, would be moved towards a relationship, perspective. And in this particular paradigm, there is no room for transactional marketing. Everything about transactional marketing becomes a legacy. They just leave it, and then they adopt an entire, RM perspective from its philosophy, from its systems, and then from its, outlook as well. Now, some businesses also, actually have RM and TM existing, separately. So they have units of operations that are only handles, an RM kind of customers, and they have units that actually handle, transactional marketing concepts, and they do not come together. They just, existing on a separate manner. So if it's about transactional marketing, you are a customer that you are just buying one of, they have an arm that actually takes care of that. And then if you have what do you call you're a customer and you want to deal with a long-term perspective, they have an entity that actually takes care of that. And then of course you have RM cohabiting as one strategy. So there are businesses also that, yes, they are an RM company, but they would not actually say that they wouldn't deal with, a transactional, what do you call, customer. They would actually, do that as well. Okay, so we have talked about different strategies that an organization can actually adopt, whether they want to go RM or they want to go, TM, or they want to, cohabit. Now, all that will be influenced by your marketing mix concept. All right. So tactically, influencing existing marketing management concept, which is the marketing mix. For example, Coca-Cola and related organizations practicing mass marketing, but has business to business relationship with distributors. So when real or anticipated cost of RM outweighs benefit, TM prevails. All right. So if you take, a company like Coca-Cola, now, would you say Coca-Cola is your typical transactional marketing company, or is a relationship marketing company, even when it comes to dealing with individual consumers? Yeah, individual consumers, like, people who buy one Coke, a kind of Coke, etc. Would you say Coca-Cola's approach with such people is very transactional or very relational, or both? Yeah? Who would answer? Who would give us an insight? Okay. Samuel, do you want to give us an insight? You said RM. Can you explain that, please?
Yes, sir. I think Coca-Cola are one of the, like, when it comes to the large businesses in the world that make it a point to always they always try for continuous purchasing. Like, it's not just about, oh, you've purchased one, so that's it, but they always want you to come back and purchase with all the things they do with their products. Like when they had when you buy the glass bottle of Coke, and then under the cork, you can find, sometimes under the cork you find prices under them, all things like that. So they're always striving for continuous relationships. So I think that falls more with relationship marketing.
Excellent. That's a very good explanation. Now, Coca-Cola, as a FMCG or fast-moving consumer goods, is in one of the markets that traditionally are very transactional, and potentially so because of the character of that particular market. So the tendency to be very transactional is high. But as Samuel said, in order that they could actually, sort of do away with or reduce that particular tendency of being in a transactional, they do a number of things to keep the relationship. For example, you can peel inside the cork and then find a particular, offer, that would let you come again. So that is a company that is even within a highly transactional environment, but tries to keep relationship with customers. That's a very fantastic point made by Samuel. Who else can tell us one of the Coca-Cola's approach that had actually made it a relational, or that was used to have a very relational, relationship with customers? Recently, Coca-Cola did something that was very, very relational.
Sir, please, is it the one they type the names Kweku and
Explain it.
is it that? I wanted
You're
to know
answering
if
the
it's
question,
that
so
one.
explain it.
Oh, okay. Coca-Cola recently, after producing the Coke, they typed the names of the day names of people on the bottles. It's
Go
sort of
ahead.
like it gives, I don't know how to explain it, but then it brings out some sort of relative, the customer can relate when buying the products with regards to the name.
So Samuel says a personalized touch. Good point. So Mimi, do you want to explain further, or somebody should continue?
Please, someone should. Okay, someone also made another point.
Samuel, can you come back and explain what Mimi is trying to say?
Oh no, I'm agreeing with what Marian is saying.
Yeah, so throw more point on it. Throw more light.
Yeah, I'm seeing what you're saying. Like some of the Coke bottles, they had like the traditional Ghanaian names, like printed on the like around the logo. So if, let's say, I was born on Saturday, like me for instance, I was born on Saturday, so I go by Kwame sometimes. So if I go and I buy a Coke bottle that says Kwame on it, I'm made to feel special. That okay, Coca-Cola is actually, they are considering me. I'm not just someone passing by, but like they are seeing me as a customer. So I always want to patronize their products. Yeah. So I was just agreeing with what she was saying.
Excellent. That's a good point. Who can relate it to something that we discussed in this class first day? Who can relate it to a theory we discussed in this class first day? Yeah? The first day that we had this class, who can relate it to a theory that we discussed? Malik. Malik, come in. Okay. Or you are in the library. If you're not in the library, I would know anyway. So if you're in the library, obviously you can't speak. But Malik Dankwa. Okay. So Malik says, yes, please in the library. Are you sure? I'll find out. Okay. So Malik says that unit of relatability, which is true. So Coca-Cola used that particular, theory, which, in marketing, what do we call it in marketing? Where, there is, that, posture, or the brand tries to look like, the consumer. You're talking about brand personality, all right? So where the brand, because there's the theory of brand personality says that where there is a congruence between the brand and the customer, there is a likability, there's a possibility that the customer will choose, the brand. So the unit of relatability concept was used by Coca-Cola, has been explained by, Mimi and Samuel, the idea that a bottle of Coke has your name on it makes you feel special, makes you feel that there is something in common between you and that particular kind of Coke. So you can imagine if you go to a shop, which we did a demonstration of that, the time they introduced this particular concept. You can imagine if you go to a particular shop and you have a can of Coke, bottles of Coke, you have Kweku, you have Kwabena, you have Kwame, etc. Surely you're not going to choose, Kweku if you're Kwame. You end up choosing, the Kwame kind of Coke. And you would be expecting to choose Kwame kind of Coke each time that, you go there or you visit a shop. Now, what makes it much more, compelling and appealing is something that they did in addition. Who can tell me? Because they didn't stop there just with the names. Who can tell me, or who can tell us what they did extra to make this, approach much more compelling? We're talking about the application of unit of relatability. Who can tell us? Samuel or Mimi, do you want to add to that? Okay. So in order for Coca-Cola to entrench that particular feeling of special, as Samuel just said, the price, not the price, Benjamin, they added the meaning of the names. So you realize that there was a short, there was a short story or a short script of who Kweku is or who Kwabena is. So they will say Kwabena born on Tuesday is so and so. They brought the values of those names, of those personalities, thereby transferring those values onto the can of Coke. So you realize that there was some sort of endorsement, what we call the transference theory. There was some sort of endorsement, onto that particular can of Coke. So you find that the can of Coke is actually speaking to you. So if you're a Kwabena, for example, and you see that your name contains, or your name denotes these values that they're expressing, that means that that particular kind of Coke has that particular value. So you're not going to only choose, your name because you've seen your name printed on that particular kind of Coke, but you're choosing it because of the pride that those values, extolled on that, kind of Coke gives you. Now, you would not want to exchange those values with someone who is called perhaps Kwabena, or if you're Amma, with those values that you feel so proud about, exchanging it with someone who is called Abena, for example. So that type of, brand personality that Coca-Cola was able to, push or was able to, enact made people feel so attached to the brand that they would always want to go out there to buy a particular kind of Coke that expresses their, identity, which we spoke, so much about last week as the unit or the basic unit of relatability. So this is the kind of activities that Coca-Cola did, to actually bring out the relational perspectives, of the relationship that they have with the consumer. So although the market is prone to be very transactional or has a very transactional character, there was something that Coca-Cola could do in order to make it much more relational, with even just the consumers, the individual consumers that they have. Of course, we could talk about, Coca-Cola and its relationship with distributors, etc., which naturally, B2B is more relational, or aligns with a relationship more than FMCG market. But even though FMCG market, they still manage to make sure that they can push a relational angle, in that perspective, as we have actually explained. All right. Thanks. Okay. So we, on the continue, we say RM as another perspective in marketing. Okay, so we've discussed that in the, so RM as another perspective in marketing, as industry characteristics may influence strategy, organizational structure hierarchy may influence strategy. As we said, depending on the industry characteristics, some industry characteristics are very transactional. And as we said, in the FMCG, which is fast moving consumer goods market, they have a very transactional characteristics. Yet we've seen an example where, a firm can actually even turn a highly transactional characteristic market into a much more relational one. And then, of course, organizational structure hierarchy may influence strategy as well. If a firm's organizational structure is very flat, that particular organization is likely to be more relational than a hierarchical one. If an organization has a very bureaucratic, structure with managerial, decisions, decisions, flowing through, the system, it is much more likely to be a very transactional one. And so, in your, approach to, establish a relationship marketing, philosophy in a business, you also want to look at the organizational structure, how it looks like, and how that could actually facilitate a transactional or a relational, environment within the firm. Gottrell, do you want to say something? Hello? Okay. So the marketing implications. So the dominant marketing orientation not to be restricted to marketing mix activities. So we're saying that if organization has to actually go relational, as opposed to, transactional, then it means that we should not actually limit the the activities, to only marketing mix, which is the 4Ps. We have to go beyond that, and we have actually seen the idea that we have to extend the 4Ps to 4Cs, or also include the 3Ps to the 4Ps, in order that we can take into consideration the limitation of the existing marketing mix and make sure that we can solve it. Also, if we were within a service orientation environment or service environment, then of course, making sure that we are understanding, the piece from the 7Ps perspective. But even then, you still want to, even if you are in a goods dominant market, you still want to look at it from the 7Ps perspective, in order that you could take care of the people factors, the process factors, and of course, the, the physical evidence factors. Don't forget, even in a highly dominant goods, market, you still have service in addition, because you cannot actually function, in even a goods market without a service component. Just like if you are in a service market, for example, banking services or medical services, definitely there's a good part of it, or there's a tangible aspect of your service that also makes it, partly good, partly, service. So you have to actually take care of the limitations with regards to the marketing mix, or with regards to, the service, characteristics, in order that you could actually fill in those gaps. Of course, the dominant quality function, that is quality, should not be restricted to only product quality, but the relationship quality. So in a relationship marketing perspective, when we talk about quality, we're not only meaning the quality of the service itself or the quality of the product itself, but we're talking about the quality of relationships, all right? So to what extent are you able to identify your customers as and when they actually enter the door? And that's why we talked about the basic unit of relatability. Are you able to identify their names? Are you able to identify their needs? Are you able to identify as and when they buy? Are you able to actually give a snapshot of who your customer is and be able to use that information to serve them appropriately? That's what we're talking about. So we're not only talking about the idea that the bank statement is printed correctly, the toner is good, and so the ink actually comes out rightly. We're not only talking about, yes, the balances are not, in some cases wrong, as some companies actually come out with your bank statement and then the statement balance is wrong. No, getting it right, etc. We're not talking about just that, but we're also talking about the interpersonal relationship, the organizational relationship that you have with the client, the quality of that, just as you have the quality of the service and product, that we're talking about. And the customer information system, more customer info in RM than TM. Guys, just a minute. Have someone knocking on my door. Hi guys, yeah, I'm back. Okay. Onyeyem, do you want to say something? Okay, so Nora says, do we have our course materials in Sakai? Yeah, I'm just about uploading them. I checked yesterday, but I couldn't find it. Okay, no, there's nothing. Yeah, I'm just about uploading it. Yeah, do you want to say something, Onyeye? Hello?
Please.
Yeah? We're
Oh,
listening
no, I
to
don't want to
you.
say anything. Sorry.
Your hand is up.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so you have to put it down. Okay. So so on the point of the customer information systems, it means that we have to, RM actually works on a more databases. I mean, you have to have a very solid, data systems, or you have to have a very solid data infrastructure in order to be able to relate to customers. So with relationship marketing, you need to have quite a very detailed, what do you call, data points for customers. Not only their names, I mean their demographics, but you're also looking at their buying behavior, their buying patterns. You're looking at their path to purchase, for example, which we call the customer journey. You want to make sure that you can map a detailed understanding, of the customer in terms of data perspective, in order that you'll be able to be successful in understanding the customer better. So with relationship marketing, you need a very sophisticated, not sophistication in terms of its complexity, but in terms of detail, information basis, in order that you could, use it to inform, strategy going forward. Of course, organizational interdependence. In RM, the organizational setup is such that there is no silos in business or in the organization. Any company that has too many barriers, or you have interdepartmental bureaucracies, then of course it would actually impact on your efficiency in executing, or the effectiveness in executing a relationship paradigm. So the accounting department very much is in touch with the marketing department, very much is in touch with, the procurement department, etc. You need to have a very fluid interdependence, within the business. Otherwise, RM can't function, because the time that is taken by one department to serve the other department obviously impact on the customer's experience. So you must actually ensure a very highly interdependent, institution. Otherwise, you cannot be very effective in executing relationship. And then of course the role of internal marketing, other staff as marketers. Now you must ensure that in RM, almost everybody is a marketer. That is, people should not see themselves as individual disciplines, but they should all work together to ensure that the customer is being taken care of. All right. So drivers, affecting strategic decisions for other relationship or transactional marketing are that we're saying that where there is a high acquisition cost relative to retention cost, then of course, you want to ensure that RM reigns, because you cannot spend so much money, every day acquiring customers. Then of course, you're not going to be in business. So in situations where acquisition cost is so high, retention retention is a good idea for you, because you will be able to retain customers and not to spend too much money, trying to gain them or acquire them. Otherwise, you cannot actually operate. Of course, where there's a high exit barrier, of course, relationship also, thrives, because customers do not want to be experiencing high cost whenever they get into a relationship. So if the business and the customer is going to experience a huge amount of cost, at the point of exiting a relationship, then there's no point. So in instances where the exit barriers for both supply and the consumer is high, they tend to maintain relationship. All right. So for example, if you have to sign a contract, all right, with a company, and just about a month or two into the contract, you want to exit. But exiting means, about 80% of the, what do you call, the revenue that you actually got from that particular contract would go away. I'm sure that you would do everything possible to keep that particular relationship till the end of, the contract period. So in instances where there's high exit barriers, of course, relationship thrives, parties want to keep the relationship. Competitive advantage, sustainability is another driver. All right, because if a relationship will give you a competitive advantage over your other, competitors, why leave? Yeah. So when you have, a competitive advantage in a relationship environment, then of course you want to keep it. And then buoyant and expanding market makes relationship, a good idea to pursue, because increasingly there are new markets, there are new entrants into the market. So when market is growing and it's expanding, especially in this moment where we have global firms, or we have firms that can actually compete without necessarily being physically present in your market, you want to keep your customers so that you are always in business. Otherwise, you may have, smaller businesses or new entrants coming into the market and taking your customers away. And a high risk, high salience product or services also, require what do you call a relationship. Nobody wants to actually send their Mercedes Benz to a wayside mechanic who end up, um, putting the car at risk, or who end up, kind of opening up the bonnets, taking some some tools out and not knowing how to fix it, because of the cost involved in acquiring something like Mercedes Benz. You want to keep a relationship with the garage in order that you can actually return it for a better fix than taking it to what do you call a wayside. So where the relationship, where there's a risk, there's a high risk or high salience of product services, you want to keep what do you call a relationship. Then of course, high emotion involved in exchange. All right. If there is an exchange of, or there's an involvement of emotions, which most of the high cost what we call relationships are, certainly you want to keep it, because by exiting the relationship can actually cause you a lot of emotional instability. And so there's a relationship to keep if there's a high emotions involved in the exchange. And you can actually talk about high involved or highly involved relationships in terms of emotions from so many aspects, or from so many perspectives. Right? Do you understand, or you want me to highlight some other place? Is that clear? Any questions or contributions? Any questions or contributions? Okay, so this actually gives, this framework actually gives or throws more light on the transactional drivers and the relational drivers that we talked about, and so are this framework as well. This is an extended one, giving you types of market and the attributes, the relational or transactional attributes that they have. Okay, we come to relationship drivers again from what we have just explained. We'll do some few discussions here because they tie in with what we have already explained. Let me ask you a question. In relationship, trust and commitment, which comes first? Yeah? Guys, we're discussing it, so I don't expect you to be quiet.
Trust.
Okay, so
Trust.
how many of you say trust comes first?
Commitment.
So I need two sides to the debate. Those of you who says trust comes first, I need your rep, your representative, and those of you who says commitment comes first, I need your rep. Or those of you who are in
Trust, you are
between.
choosing patience.
Sorry? Patience. So patience.
Patience.
Sir, I'll go for trust.
Oh, yeah.
Sir, I think commitment comes first, trust, because trust is not something that just happens.
Okay,
It's built.
so are you representing commitment people? You're representing
Yes,
commitment
sir.
people. Okay. Okay. Those who says trust, who is representing you?
Patience.
I
Patience is
will.
Okay, patience. Okay. So Onyenya, go ahead. Let's
No,
listen.
sir, Nura will take it.
Okay, Nura, patience is you take up. Okay,
He just wants
Onyenya,
to
go
feel.
ahead.
So my points are this: when it comes to trust, it is built up. It's not a one-day thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why with commitment, how you see the person, how much time, how much commitment the person is put to you, then the trust builds up. At the end of the day, you now say you trust this person.
Okay, so you're saying that trust is something that you build,
Yes, sir.
and commitment is an outcome of trust or an input of trust.
Commitment is an input of trust.
Okay,
It's
so
both. It's
commitment
both
is
of
an
them.
input and trust is an outcome.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, good. All right, yes, let's go to those who say trust. Yeah, trust people.
Nora.
Yes, sir, I believe you need to trust someone before you go into a relationship with the person. Trust comes before commitment. So if you trust
Okay.
someone enough, then you'd know if you want to stay committed to that person or not. If you don't trust someone and you're in the commitment, there's always that element of doubt. There's always some part of you that believes you shouldn't trust the person, and then a relationship doesn't stick if there's no trust. So I believe you need to trust the person to some extent enough first before you move on to commitment. Because if you don't trust someone and you are committed to the person, I mean, it just doesn't. Trust always comes before commitment.
Okay, Nora, a follow up. Can you give me some of the attributes of trust? What must you do to elicit trust or for that trust to happen?
I believe honesty, um, trustworthiness. It's just like trust. You need to be genuine.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be. You need to communicate well,
Okay.
and you just need to be genuine. And
Okay, so let's
yes.
measure that. Genuineness, how do you measure it? What must somebody do to name it this is genuine?
Most probably from their actions, and then cause and effect. So sometimes when they do something, and then in the end, it turns out it's actually true, or let's say the person expresses love. The person says I love you, and then you realize that it reflects on the person's actions. So the person is
Mm-hmm.
genuine. The person actually loves you. The person is not just saying it, paying lip service.
Okay.
Actions.
All
You
right.
can be genuine.
Okay. Onyenya, can you give us the attributes of commitment, or how do we measure commitment? What are the things that you would see that would say this is commitment?
So I think it will be consistency with the words. I mean, your words and your actions should be consistent
So
within a
consistency.
period of yes, sir. Because you
And what?
like what she was saying. If
Mm-hmm.
you love me, I have to see consistency in your actions before I actually believe that you are committed to that statement.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So thanks for that, the two of you. Now, I'm going to give you scenarios, and then I want you to tell me where they fall, right? Okay. So you're on campus. Okay, so given that the two of you are ladies, let me use this scenario. Not that I'm targeting you, but you're on campus. Uh, a guy meets you and asks for your number. All right. Now, in that particular instance, what is going through your head? Now, let me take Nora.
Okay, so first I would ask myself if like he's just a stranger, so initially I don't trust him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't trust someone, I don't see the reason why I should give my number out. If it's someone from the person's appearance or from the person's speech, if I feel like I can trust him to some extent, then fine. Then I go ahead to give the number. But then if I feel like he's not someone I can trust, I'll just give him an excuse and then not give the number out.
Okay, so you have established
There's always trust
right from the beginning. Using what?
Yes. So using his speech, how he talks, how he appears, the manner in which he conducts himself, and all that. So
That
I
is the
just look
manner
at
in which
everything
he asked
generally.
you. When you say conduct, the manner in which he asked you, right?
Not necessarily his posture, his
Okay.
Appearance, his
Okay.
speech, his maybe level of intelligence to some extent.
Okay.
From the initial conversation, yes.
Okay, good. All right. So, Onyinye, same goes to you. What's going through your head?
Honestly, it's just going to be like, why is this person stopping me? But then I feel like it depends on if I'm in a good mood, because I feel like you can never just trust somebody meeting the person the first time, and just based on like what you're seeing. So it's like if I'm in a good mood, then I will give you my number, and then I guess we can build that trust over time.
Okay. So at the time that the number was given.
Sir, but I feel
Yeah, go on.
Yes, I feel if you meet the person for the first time and then you can see that the person looks like a fraud person, or the person is not a serious person, like maybe from your judgment, and then you decide to just give your number out. I mean, you are in for a whole lot of trust issues and problems, because you need to trust the person to some extent. I'm not saying fully. You can't entirely trust someone on your first encounter. You just need to trust the person to some extent. You know that the person is genuine, and maybe the person just wants to talk to you or something. You should trust the person to some extent before you're able to give your number out. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. So when you had just given the number out, have you trusted and have you committed, or have you trusted but you haven't committed?
I've trusted, but I haven't committed.
Okay. And Onyinye?
Honestly, I don't even know.
Okay.
I don't know, but I know I haven't trusted. That one is for sure.
Okay.
But then I will give it a chance.
Okay. So that's a very good conversation. Obviously, we can go ahead, after class even to discuss it. And so many other people have actually put out their views. You can't just trust anyone overnight. Emanuela says the time you spend with a person, how dedicated, consistent, faithful, committed to a cause will build your trust. Trust is based on practical actions, and actions and more convincing than words. Okay, so that conversation, obviously, it's ongoing in literature. Whether trust and commitment, which comes first, which is a what do you call it, an input, or which is an outcome. It's still going on, so we can have it. Now, I'll give you another scenario. Taxis, right? Taxis. So you're going somewhere. Now you're standing by the roadside. What would make you wave at a taxi, but not wave at taxi? Wave at a car known as a taxi, but not wave at another car, which probably is not a taxi, or which is not a taxi. What will make you wave? Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah, Nura.
Yes, because
Yeah, you were in
because you
karaoke
trust
mode.
that
Start again.
are safe.
No, you were in karaoke mode. Start again.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Hello?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Start.
Yes, I was saying that with the taxi, based on previous experiences, you can trust that to some extent. Again, you can trust that the taxi driver is genuine, and then he take you to your place safely, and then there wouldn't be any form of bad happenings. But then with just a normal car, you don't know the person, although you don't know the taxi driver too, but then you've never had any previous experience with that person, and then you don't know where the person is taking you, or what the person might do to you. So
okay,
you don't really have some form of trust.
Okay, so what made you trust that the taxi driver would take you where you're going? And what made you even wave at the first place that this is a taxi?
For that driver. Based on previous experiences. Yeah.
Okay, who else want to add?
So you've entered taxis for.
Who else want to add?
Please, I don't agree with the based on.
Okay, Daniel, let's
Please,
see.
I don't agree with it based on previous experience.
Let's Emanuela come first. Emanuela,
because I don't think it was him.
So say the only reason that will make me wave at a taxi instead of a private car is because I know the purpose of a taxi. When I see a taxi, I know it's for commercial purposes. But for the private car, I really do not know if it's someone's private car. I really do not know. But I know for taxi, yes, it's for commercial purposes.
Yeah, but expand on that. Why do you think that because it's for commercial purposes, it will serve the purpose that you are stopping?
See, I'll come back.
Okay, you come back. Daniel.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Daniel.
Okay, he said, I don't know if it was Nura that said based on previous experience.
Daniel, your voice is very low.
So please, I'm trying to say that I think when Nura, I don't know if it was Nura that said it was based on previous experiences. I don't know if she's the one that said that.
Yeah.
I think it's not the same.
Yes, I
it's
said
the
that.
same driver. You cannot say it. Okay, Nura. I think since it's not the same driver we are talking about, I don't think you should state the word based on previous experiences, but you should rather focus on the fact that the taxi, and the taxi is the brand. Everybody knows taxi is also would some trust in stopping the taxi. I don't know if you understand me. And I want to say that the commitment actually can be instant. That's what I wanted to say here.
Okay.
Sir, please, can I chip in here?
Yeah, chip in.
Okay. So the reason why I said previous experiences, let's, for example, you have different drivers at different times. But then because you have some level of trust that this is a commercial vehicle, and then you've never had any problems with it. Anytime you order, it takes you to your destination safely. You have that level of trust. So although they are private cars, but then it's on the app, it's Bolt or Uber, you trust it. Same with taxis. All your life, you've been picking taxis. You've never had problems with taxi drivers, at least not in regards to taking you to your destination. Full of trust based on your previous with different taxi drivers. I'm not talking of one person in particular.
Okay. Today we're having a lot of karaoke in the class. All right. I think the point here that you're trying to drive at is that for a taxi as a concept, there has been
I think the experience
there has been a base guarantee, all right? The state has already guaranteed that if you see a car painted as yellow and white, that car is a taxi. And it means that the driver who is driving it had been certified as a fit and proper person. The person's licensing had been checked, and it's been validated by the state that his mental state is all right, and so he can take you to wherever you want to go. And of course, there is a pre-existing contract between the two of you. So already there's a contract that taxis or commercial vehicles have with customers that is pre-existing, all right? That there's an existing contract that immediately you flag a taxi, it means, they have to take you from one place to the other. So that is the basis that actually establishes the trust. So in the first place, there are some basic identities, that had been pre-established, that when you see that, or when you see it, immediately it tells you that this is a fit and proper person and can take you to a place. So there is a pre-existing, contest. Now, that pre-existing contest, would we call it as a commitment, variables? Because you see, the driver has satisfied certain requirements, and those requirements is the reason why you have the conviction that when you flag it, it would stop, and when it stops, it would take you to where you're going to go, and then you also fulfill your part of the bargain. So the debate that we're having here is that at what point would we say that trust must begin or commitment must begin? Do you get it? So, and again, do we see trust as a continuum, as a process, or we see trust as an event? Do we see commitment as a process, or we see commitment as an event? Which means, as a relationship marketer, you must actually approach these things from the perspective of dynamic, capability. So it means that you must institutionalize some fundamental processes in order to secure trust first, and then build on it over time to gain more trust. And that fundamental processes that you must establish, remember that it's also a commitment, because you could not actually achieve the first level of trust without those fundamental, structures. So as, Nura said, I want to see you in a particular shape. I want to see you speak a particular language. I want to see your posture in the right manner. I want to see whether you are someone that indeed I can say, no, I can, put my number in your care. And those things that Nura want to see are actually pre-existing commitments that the gentleman who is actually asking for your number had put in place in order that that level of trust can happen. So the conversation whether trust or commitment comes first is a relationship question. And it's very, very philosophical of organizations. If organizations don't institute early mechanisms or don't institute certain mechanisms, certainly the customer would not come forward. So you say you are a travel and tour agent, you secure, visas for people to go to the abroad, to go to US, etc. Yet your outfit does not look like that. Certainly, Nura is not going to have the confidence to commit their relationship in your care. Do you get it? So the question of relationship and trust, which one comes first, is a debate. But it is a debate that is very fundamental to relationship marketing. There must be certain, drivers, or there must be certain antecedents in order that we could actually build, the relationship. But those antecedents from trust or commitment perspectives, it is a question of how do you approach the relationship, all right? And for me, I think they all come together, they all continue. It has to be started from a base and then be built onward. Emanuela, your hand is still up. Do you want to say something?
Sorry, sir, that was a mistake.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, anybody wants to add something? Okay. What time do we finish? Mimi, what time do we close? So Jingdon says, I trust Uber driver because my journey can be displayed and tracked in the mobile app. Okay, good. Mimi? Okay, who else know what time we're supposed to close?
1:20.
1:20.
So it's about time now. All right. Guys, know that we do not have enough time as we used to. So in as much as I would love us to have a conversation, you have to also play a part so that we can speed up. If we do not have discussions and I just keep lecturing, I'm sure you may not really enjoy the class very well and the understanding may be affected. All right. So please try and make sure that you engage in class so that it doesn't become difficult for you, because it can be very boring sitting behind your machine and no conversation. Yeah. All right. Thank you for coming. Hopefully we would have more, discussions, and you can continue to debate trust or commitment as you go. I will upload some of the course materials on Sakai, so you can actually download it. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you,
Enjoy your
sir.
day. Rest of it. Tomorrow we have a class from what? 7:30. Tomorrow's class starts at 7:30, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Take care. Don't forget to wear your masks. All right. Bye.
You too.